What up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to a brand new episode of Pickups right here, as always, on our Instagram page, our YouTube page, anywhere you're finding us on the World Wide Web. We just say thank you, and if you haven't taken the time to go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, well, now's your chance. Go ahead, I'll wait. I'm a big fan of professional wrestling, and I think if you're watching this video, that means you're a big fan of professional wrestling too. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right on in to see what we got this week. In Your House, Judgment Day. Now, right off the bat, go ahead and take a look at that sweet cover. You got The Undertaker extending his hand out. Obviously, the main event, it was The Undertaker taking on Kane for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship that had been vacated the month prior at Breakdown, that September of '98. So it was Kane versus The Undertaker with Stone Cold Steve Austin as the special guest referee. And if you all remember correctly, Vince McMahon had told Steve Austin that if he did not declare a new champion, he would be fired. So my personal history with this VHS tape goes all the way back to the fall of 1998. You see, when it came to pay-per-views, I wasn't necessarily able to watch them until they came out on home video several months after the fact and were available at your local video store. So at the time, my buddy Sean West was able to record this specific pay-per-view and gave me a copy of it on a blank tape. Now, needless to say, I rewatched this pay-per-view many times over the years to come. So flash forward all these years later, I'm picking up wrestling VHS tapes just to build that collection up. And lo and behold, I came across WWF Judgment Day. And of course, you know, for a lot of these pay-per-views from 1998, 99, they're really not that expensive. So it's a real cheap pickup. Wasn't breaking the bank, that's for sure. Probably paid maybe $10 for this, you know, which a lot of people will be like, oh, maybe that's $9 more than you should have. You know, most Goodwills are only selling these things for $1. But again, as I've said in previous videos, who the hell is finding WWF pay-per-views at their local Goodwill? I'm really interested to see the comments on this one, because again, I'm not finding them, at least locally here. So let's go ahead and break down the card. I did watch this pay-per-view prior to going ahead and recording this video, as I felt it was necessary that I needed to suffer through 2.5 hours of this pay-per-view, which at the very beginning I was pretty stoked about. I was like, oh man, this is just gonna be a nostalgic rerun, right? Well, halfway through the pay-per-view, I fell asleep. So let's go to break down the pay-per-view really quick. You had Al Snow and Head versus Marvelous Mark Marrow. You had LOD 2000 and Draws taking on DOA and Paul Ellering. You had The Rock versus Mark Henry. You had Goldust versus Val Venus. You had Taka Michinoku versus Christian for the Light Heavyweight Championship. Again, you had the Intercontinental Championship, Ken Shamrock versus Mankind. Tag Team Championships were on the line, New Age Outlaws versus the Headbangers. The European Championship was on the line, D'Lo Brown versus X-Pac. And then for the World Wrestling Federation Championship, you had Kane versus The Undertaker with the special guest referee, Stone Cold Steve Austin. As I sit here and talk about this pay-per-view, really, I think probably, in my opinion, the match of the night on this pay-per-view was that Taka Michinoku versus Christian Light Heavyweight Championship. Obviously, this is the very first time Christian was making his debut in the WWE, as in storyline was the little brother of Edge. You know, you had Gangrel looking like he was, you know, lost between the Interview with the Vampires movie and Lost Boys. I mean, I don't know, dude. The dude was pretty out there with that fucking mullet, dude. Let's just put it there. But I thought that was a really good match. I really actually kind of enjoyed the Val Venus versus Goldust match, which was, when they did the promo for it, you kind of felt like Val Venus was the good guy, and that, you know, Dustin, this was like the reemergence of Goldust in late '98 there. You felt like Dustin Runnels was just trying to, you know, censor Val Venus and, you know, all the things that he stood for, which was just having a good time back in the day. Hello, ladies. So Goldust is back, and I guess they swapped. I mean, Val Venus up until that point was a good guy. When you think of 1998, especially the fall, you got to remember of how over D-Generation X was. I mean, you had the New Age Outlaws on the show. You had X-Pac winning the European Championship again from D'Lo Brown. I thought the Tag Team Championship match was pretty good psychological tag team wrestling. Man, you go back into and watch the match there. I mean, Mr. Ass was basically held in the corner the whole entire time. The Headbangers just tagged in and out. I mean, Jim Ross was in his best form, I felt, on this pay-per-view, calling the action, and just really laid it out that, man, the tag team of the Headbangers was really, you know, just kicking ass during this match and possibly could win, but then the Road Dogg got fed up at the end and smashed one of their boomboxes over the headbanger's head. And, well, it was a disqualification at that point. But when X-Pac came out, for a guy that garnered so much heat just a few years later going into 2001, in 1998, the dude was so over along with the entire group. As we saw earlier in the pay-per-view, Triple H was taken out again by Ken Shamrock as he had a busted knee. The match between The Rock and Mark Henry, Mark Henry got a win over The Rock in a month prior to The Rock winning the WWF Championship for the very first time. That doesn't happen usually. Obviously, Mark Henry has gone on to become a Hall of Famer in his own right. But in 1998, man, really honestly, I don't think he really hit his peak until at least 10 years later with the Hall of Pain gimmick. So seeing him beat The Rock was definitely kind of stunning back in the year 1998. The Ken Shamrock Mankind match I thought was pretty fun. The interview that Mankind did with Michael Cole, it really made me remember that Mick Foley was so good on the microphone. I know I've been quoted in the past as being the same, Mick Foley's overrated. I think in certain situations he can be overrated, but damn, him on the mic, it's money every single time. Ken Shamrock, on the other hand, is a guy that you kind of wonder, he was up in that upper echelon. He felt like he was on that same level as a Mankind, The Rock. He was just right there, ready to take the next step and, become World Wrestling Federation champion at some point. But for some reason or another, something didn't stick, and he was knocked down a peg or two after losing the Intercontinental Championship. Obviously, he began teaming with the Big Boss Man and went on to win the World Tag Team Championship just a couple months later. But at the same time, though, he never achieved the same heights that he did within the year 1998. Not saying he achieved the biggest heights of them all, obviously, but at the same time, just a year prior, he was main eventing in your house against Shawn Michaels for the world title, then went on to feud with The Rock over the Intercontinental title, which a lot of people would say he should have won the Intercontinental Championship back at WrestleMania 14. But by the fall, he gains the Intercontinental Championship, but he lost all his fanfare as he was a bad guy at that point. Mankind ended up losing the match based on submitting to his own finger. It was kind of a weird finish, but hey, that's Vince Russo booking in 1998 for you. So we get to the main event, The Undertaker versus Kane. Right off the bat, man, the entrances for The Undertaker and Kane were awesome. By this point, The Undertaker's got his rock entrance music. Kane comes out just looking like a roided up badass. You look back in the year 1998 and you just realize of how awesome Kane was, how awesome The Undertaker was, and then you add Stone Cold Steve Austin to the mix. It was leading up to what could have been an awesome pay-per-view main event. Unfortunately, then the bell rang, as they say. This definitely was not the best match of Kane and The Undertaker. Personally, my favorite was always their one from WrestleMania 14. But their Judgment Day main event the crowd was chanting boring at certain points. Stone Cold Steve Austin was doing his best to entertain as the special guest referee, and shit just kind of breaks down at the end there where Stone Cold just stuns everybody, counts the 1, 2, 3, and declares himself the winner, which right then and there you're just kind of like, okay, are you getting fired? And then, there was a little bit of lead up to there, and Vince McMahon says, screw you, Stone Cold, you're fired. And I don't know if that's the first time that he's actually gone ahead and made that mention, because I know obviously Vince McMahon is very famous for firing people on television. So this may have been his very first firing. Minus maybe the Bret Hart one, but Bret screwed Bret. So by the time the main event comes around, I'm ready for the pay-per-view to be over. I'm not gonna lie. Again, this isn't necessarily your best WWF outing. Was it fun just to think about, be nostalgic, this pay-per-view is gonna be cool? But again, not seeing it probably since maybe 2000, so 23 years it's been since I've seen this pay-per-view. You probably give it maybe a 2.5, 3 stars. I don't know. Like I said, that Christian Taka Michinoku match was pretty fun. Mick Foley on the mic was pretty fun. I really did enjoy the WWF Tag Team Championship match. Outside of that, though, again, you want to be the main event kicked ass, but unfortunately, outside of Stone Cold Steve Austin getting fired, the main event kind of was pretty lackluster. And the fact that, the whole firing, and, Jim Ross is this is the end of an era, really giving Stone Cold Steve Austin a legit send-off. The dude was back within, 2 weeks? I remember he was wrestling in the tournament at the Survivor Series the very next month to determine the brand new champion, which obviously The Rock wins. But what the hell, dude? Again, that's Vince Russo booking 1998. It is what it is, man. Would I recommend you going out and buying WWF Judgment Day in your house? Probably not. Maybe. I mean, if you're a big fan and you got to own them all, then maybe go ahead and go buy it. But in the meantime, maybe just check out it on the Peacock. At least you're saving yourself $10. WWF Judgment Day. I'm a big fan of The Undertaker, a big fan of Kane, just not a big fan of that main event. With that being said, though, if you haven't done already, go ahead and like and subscribe to this video. That helps us out with the algorithm out there. Helps us get us on more people's cell phone screens, tablet screens, TV screens, wherever you're watching it from. We just say thank you. And until next time, peace.